Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the fourth and final Siba Talks episode of this academic year. My name is Keval Shah. I am the founder and host of this series, and it's really a great pleasure to have you all here. So thank you for being here, and particularly warm welcome to people who are watching online. Over the last 12 months or so since we started this series, my guests have included some of the brightest names and most creative voices in Finnish and international musical life. People like Susanna Malki, Sebastian Fagerlund, Emilia Sisko, Jimmy Lopez, Maja Kauhanen, and this evening another inspiring voice gets added to that list. As always, these interviews will be interspersed with excerpts of music chosen by my guest, and as ever, at the end of the discussion, you will have a chance to ask any of your own burning questions. So please do not be shy. Somebody will come around with a microphone, I think, and will be forcing you to ask something. My guest tonight is quite simply one of the most influential pianists and pedagogues in Finland. His career has taken him all over the world as pianist, teacher, and competition jury member. And I think it's difficult to overstate the role he has had in shaping the landscape of Finnish piano playing and music. His career as a player has been defined, amongst other things, by recordings of the complete piano music of Jean Sibelius. And as a teacher, he has exerted an enormous influence on generations of pianists, many of whom have been international competition prize winners, and many of whom are now themselves professors in universities across Europe. He has been named Professor of the Year by the Finnish Professors League in recognition of his outstanding achievements as a teacher here at the Sibelius Academy, where he has now been professor for over 40 years and continues to teach to this day. It is a real pleasure for me to have him as my guest, so please give a warm welcome to Erik Tawaststjerna. Welcome.
Thank you. A great pleasure to be here with you.
Erik, let's go back to the very beginning. You were born in Helsinki in 1951, and you were raised in, let's say, a prominent musical family. Your father was a pianist himself, a biographer of Sibelius. The composer's diaries, you told me, were in your home growing up. And you've described Sibelius as being almost like a family member in your household. Such was the weight of his name. Can you tell us a bit about your environment growing up and what your early experiences were of listening to and then playing music?
When I was a little kid, like 5 years old, I remember my father used to still practice the piano every day, although he was more or less giving up his concert career. But he used to play Chopin and Sibelius, and he would ask me, do you recognize which one is which? Is this Sibelius or is this Chopin? And little by little, I learned to distinguish between these two styles. So that was one example of my father's influence on me. When you mentioned the Sibelius diaries at our home, our cat used to sleep on them. So they were very much part of our household.
Sibelius is somehow part of the furniture of your childhood.
Exactly, yes.
I mean, did you ever find that the combination of Sibelius and your father, did these big figures ever exert an influence that you found to be too heavy or overwhelming? Was there any feeling in you that you needed to define yourself separately from these things?
I didn't think of it like that. It was natural. It was like I grew up in that environment and that was it. I did not think that this is good or this is bad. Later maybe, but not at that moment.
And when did the piano come into your life as a player? When did you have your first lessons?
Well, my father taught me when I was about 6 or 7. That's when I started. A few years he was my teacher, but he was actually not a very good teacher for children. He had no experience in children's pedagogy. So I have the feeling that it might have been a better idea to find another teacher already when I was very young, but it didn't happen.
You eventually found your way, though. But before we get too far into your pianistic and musical future, let's stick just for a little bit with Sibelius, because the first track you've chosen this evening is indeed an extract of a piece by Sibelius, and it's actually with him conducting. Could you tell us a bit about this recording?
Yes, it's a very unique recording, because it's the only recording where Sibelius is himself conducting. And it was made for the New York World Expo 1939. January 1st, 1939, in the R House Concert Hall of the Sibelius Academy, radio orchestra. It's a chamber orchestra with timpani. And the piece is Andante Festivo, which I'm sure all of you know. He conducts it in a little bit slower tempo than it is usually nowadays conducted. It's usually conducted about 5 minutes, and now it's about 6:20 or so when he conducts it himself. I think there is a kind of almost religious, although Sibelius was not a churchgoer, he was not religious in that sense, but nature was religion to him. He found that nature was, it was like a pantheistic experience for him. He worshipped the trees and landscapes and big birds. So I think you can hear this solemn atmosphere in Andante Festivo, especially in this interpretation.
Let's have a listen.
Call this an authentic interpretation. And it struck my mind that when we talk about the movies, The Unknown Soldier, you must know, do you know both versions? The original one from 1956
this is
and
the version
then the recent one.
I don't know the new one.
I would say that the original, I mean, I'm not a film critic and I'm not saying which one is better, but I would say that from the 1950s version, it's authentic because people in that film, they had actually lived through the war years and the equipment was directly from the army, so exactly the same equipment that was used in the war. So, and the way they talk, the way they act, it's typical of 1950s. Actually, I can remember some of that atmosphere from 1950s. Whereas the modern Unknown Soldier is an excellent film, but I had the feeling that these actors are not from the same world. It's not the same kind of atmosphere they have. It's a very good film, but the 1950s version is more authentic.
Yeah, there's a challenge, isn't there, of having to reinterpret a story and having to reinterpret an attitude that you are now distant from. One is documentary almost, and one is
absolutely.
One is movie.
Yes.
I'm sure there are many parallels in our musical world as well.
Yes.
When we get the opportunity to hear Sibelius conducting his own music, and now we have to reinterpret. We don't have the document itself now.
We don't have to copy Sibelius's interpretation, but I think it's wonderful that we can hear how he conducted his own music.
Yeah, and you can hear very clearly the sense of the magnitude, the breadth in the sound.
I think the story goes that when they rehearsed, they only had one rehearsal. And after a few bars, Sibelius interrupted and said, more broad and more grandiose it should sound. And that's what we hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Erik, after studying with your father, this not great teacher, you then studied a while with your neighbor, who was the eminent Finnish pianist and teacher Tapani Valtsa.
Yes.
What was that like?
He was a fantastic musician. And he was then a professor. He was actually my predecessor in this professor's position I have. There was something like in Sviatoslav Richter's playing, the kind of virtuosity that was not superficial, but deep understanding of music. He was very inspiring. But maybe he was also not a good teacher for young children. He was also not very experienced. So I had that type of two first teachers.
We'll have to come back to this topic of the pedagogy of young musicians and children, because of course that's shifted a lot in this country and in this Finnish pedagogic culture.
Absolutely.
And I think we'll talk more about that later. But you mentioned Richter, and so I wonder, was it Tapani Valtsa who influenced your decision to start taking lessons in Moscow? Because you then started to travel regularly between Helsinki and Moscow.
Well, that was my father's idea, because my father had worked in the foreign ministry earlier, during the war and after. So he happened to know some people that were stationed in Moscow, in the Finnish embassy. So I had a chance to go there and take some lessons and then come back. This was during my high school years.
And what do you remember of that period? I mean, you go to Moscow, you have access to pianists like Richter and Gilels and concerts.
Yes.
How did that period shape your aesthetic ideas as a musician?
Well, that opened up a whole new world for me, because then I understood what really high quality means in piano playing. It was unforgettable to hear those concerts. And I heard students also who were, of course, much more advanced than I was myself. But it was a very fascinating, although, everyday life in Moscow was not easy to buy food and, any other normal things that we have taken for granted in the West. So it was not exactly like a holiday trip. It was rather hard work and a little bit ascetic.
As a teenager, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. You're living in Helsinki and you're traveling. Moscow is, okay, it's not so far away, but it's not close. This is a long journey to make to go and have piano lessons. Yeah. At that point, were you already thinking that this was part of professional training?
Yes, that's when it opened up to me, the feeling that I will be a pianist.
And while you were in Moscow, was there any part of you that wanted to stay there and study full time?
Well, that's a difficult question, because first of all, the practical life in Moscow was not very pleasant. And I also had the feeling that since I did not have the childhood training of the Russian students, I was a little bit struggling with their pedagogy, because they expected me to play all the Chopin etudes already at age 15, which of course was not the case in my case.
What did you learn from that time? I mean, you say it opens up your world, and of course it introduces you to repertoire which you perhaps wouldn't have otherwise encountered so much here.
Yes. Well, it was more difficult than I had played before. That's true. It was like Chopin's Scherzo No. 2, some Chopin etudes, Beethoven Opus 2, No. 3. Big works for a 14-year-old.
And did you relish the challenge at the time, or were you intimidated by this challenge?
Well, there were elements of both.
But you clearly, you fought through because you then decided to continue full-time piano study.
Yes.
And we'll go on in a moment to talk about the decisions you made to not come to Finland, but to travel abroad.
Yes.
But perhaps before then we can listen to a bit more music whilst we're thinking about Moscow and Russia. Your next track is a piece by Mussorgsky, an excerpt from the first version, the original 1869 version of Boris Godunov.
Yes.
But it's a particular recording that you've chosen with Martti Talvela. Could you tell us why you chose this?
First of all, I heard Boris Godunov in the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow, and it made a very, very great impression on me. My father also always talked about Boris Godunov as being one of the greatest operas. But the real reason why I chose this recording is that when I was in New York later studying, I got to know Martti Talvela, the Finnish giant, and he was singing Boris Godunov at the Met. And can you imagine, all of New York City was covered with his pictures on the bus stops. He was Boris Godunov. It was a symbol of Metropolitan Opera. So he was really at the peak of his career. And I had the opportunity to play with him, and we performed a recital in a smaller hall in New York. I remember always our first rehearsal. I had been trained to be very discreet as an accompanist. When we started, he stopped me and said, "You can play twice as loud." So I was much too careful at first.
Let's have a listen. This is an extract from Boris's monologue in Act 2 of the original 1869 version of Boris Godunov.
Какой-то трепетный, ждешь чего-то. Молитвой теплой угодником Божьим я манила заглушить души страдания. Страшная рана зияет, duszyca kryje o bryd smyrtny. O Господи,
It was this extract from Boris Godunov's monologue in Act 2 of Boris Godunov by Mussorgsky, chosen because of your relationship with Martti Talvela.
Yes. It's also a very up-to-date aria because as Russian Tsar, Boris sings that I have attained the highest power, but I am tormented because people are hungry and there's the ghost of the murdered crown prince that is haunting Boris. So it's a very up-to-date image.
And again, this sense of breadth, grandiosity, magnitude, it's not so dissimilar to Sibelius.
That's true.
Musically.
Yes.
So before you met Martti Talvela in New York, first you went to Vienna.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about why you and so many musicians of your generation, when the time came to study music full-time, chose to go away from Finland?
Well, to put it very bluntly, the Sibelius Academy was not yet on the level that it is now. It was at least my father's conviction that one should go abroad. And actually all my colleagues in my age group, they went to either Vienna or Paris, or in some cases Russia, but I had already seen Moscow, so I didn't want to go there anymore.
And what was Vienna like compared to Moscow
It
and
was
compared to
the
Helsinki?
absolute opposite. The city of the waltzes and cafes, and it was very international. My teacher was Dieter Weber, and in his class there were many, many nationalities already, including some Asian students and from North America, South America. It was a fascinating group of people.
And musically, what were the important lessons for you in Vienna?
Of course, we concentrated on Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Schubert. Those were the central composers. Chopin, yes, still, but Russian music, no. Least grudgingly, yes.
And if in Moscow it was Richter and Gilels in Moscow, but who were the pianists in Vienna who were shaping your musical mind?
Well, there was Wilhelm Kempff, who visited Vienna often. Friedrich Gulda, who played jazz also, maybe you know about him. He was a fantastic artist. He played all of Bach, well-tempered clavier in 2 evenings, of course, from memory and no problem. Very impressive.
And Wilhelm Kempff is someone who you then took classes with. You went to his master
Yes.
classes in Italy. What was that experience like for you?
That was unforgettable because Kempff was already 80 years old, but he played any Beethoven sonata from memory, of course, and we were a group of about 10 people. We had to prepare, each of us had to prepare 2 early sonatas, 2 middle sonatas, 2 late sonatas. And his teaching was not at all like normal piano teaching. He might say, go to the garden and listen to the birds singing there. That is how you should play this movement of Beethoven.
How did you find that as a young pianist? Because you are now on the other side. You are now the wise professor teaching young students. But
Not yet.
yeah. No, but they're already wise.
Yeah.
But so often young musicians can be so caught up in the technical demands of repertoire that the sort of expressive or imaginative or metaphorical world of birds and gardens and expressivity can feel quite distant. Do you remember it being something which you understood quite easily from Kempff?
Yes, because it was him, his charisma and his magnetism. It made it very understandable. And I did not go there. I mean, nobody went there to get advice for fingerings or pedalings. That was not his way of teaching.
Yeah, you knew what you were going there for.
Absolutely. There was one young German pianist who was brilliant and very talented, but he did not like Kempff at all. He said that, he's an old uncle that is speaking about nonsense, so it's not interesting. And it happened that this boy, he played very loud. And Kempf warned him a few times, said, don't play so loud because the piano, if you break the piano, it's difficult to get a tuner here in Positano in Italy. Then this boy was very stubborn, and in the next lesson he played again very loud. And suddenly Kempf got up and, aufhören, stop it, you break the piano.
And Kempf's own playing
Yes.
exemplifies so many of the values that he shared with you as a teacher, this poetic sensibility,
Absolutely.
this, let's say, unconventional and very spontaneous expressivity. How do you, as a teacher now, how do you pass these values on to your students? How do you explain the same ideas?
I wish I could, but I try to speak of the freedom. Often I had the feeling that Kempf had studied the score very well a few years earlier. But then when he came to the piano, he told the music in his own words. So he did not play like with a magnifying glass, that here is a crescendo and here is a diminuendo, but he created the atmosphere of the piece. That was very unique. And that one can hear in his recordings too.
Yes, and let's move on to that now, because we're going to hear an extract from Schubert's Little A Major Piano Sonata, the so-called Little A Major, the D664.
Yes.
And this is a little excerpt from the first movement.
So listen to the creative freedom and almost lead-like expression in this performance. I think it's wonderful. And interesting is that although he's basically a lyrical pianist, at least in this type of music, there is that one place in octaves, which he actually plays very powerfully and almost in an angular way. That shows that in art, it's easy to be only lyrical or only, let's say, passionate or violent. But to combine these is the real art.
It's funny that you mention this lead-like quality because it seems to me that in this Schubert piano sonata in particular, but in his sonatas in general, you detect that this is, of course, a composer whose musical home lies in song. And exactly that thing that happens in the Schubert songs where the lyrical meets the drama, or the lightness meets the dark, and the ability, the imperative, I suppose, for a singer and pianist to be able to hold those two things at the same time is something which Kempf demonstrates so beautifully in this recording. And I can almost hear in his very unique cantabile that he almost seems to put words onto his lines. There's such subtlety and nuance in his phrasing and his shading of a line.
It's fascinating. Did you know that he met Sibelius several times? He visited Ainola in the 30s and in the 40s. And if you go to Ainola next time, go to the kitchen of Ainola and check the chairs. There are simple chairs in the kitchen. In one of the chairs, in the bottom part of the chair, there's written, "On this chair, Wilhelm Kempf sat and played for us Schumann Fantasy in C major in 1928 or whatever, I don't remember the year." So it's a very special chair in Ainola. And in Sibelius' last year, Kempf visited him, and Sibelius wished to hear the slow movement of Hammerklavier Sonata. And after Kempf had finished, Sibelius told him, "You have played this for me beautifully, not as a pianist, but as a human being."
Can you unpack that a little bit? What does that mean?
Well, we have already talked about it. It's a poetic expression, and it's about humanity. It's difficult to explain it in detail, but Kempf was never one who followed the score, like, as I said, like with a magnifying glass or in a kind of locked up tradition. It had to be free and flowing and almost like improvisation.
Speaking of freedom, your own education took several free paths. After Vienna, you went to New York.
Yes.
And in New York, this was where the Russian school of piano playing started to shape your technical and musical world. Tell me briefly about this period in New York. This, of course, where you met Martti Talvela, but where you also had a very influential piano teacher.
Yes, my teacher at Juilliard School was Sasha Gorodnitsky, who had studied with Joseph Levine, who was a good friend of Rachmaninoff's. And if you go to Moscow Conservatory, there is a marble plaque on the wall saying that gold medals for 1892, Sergei Rachmaninoff, Joseph Levine, Alexander Scriabin. So it was a good year for Moscow Conservatory.
What was this kind of teaching like? I mean, we've mentioned now a number of people who you have maybe not been the right pedagogue at the right time or with the right skills, but in New York you found somebody who shaped you in a very positive way.
I studied Rachmaninoff's concertos number 2 and 3 with this teacher, Gorodnitsky, and it was a very important influence for my thinking because there was a tradition that I did not get, of course, in Vienna. Vienna was, as I told you, a different style. But this was so wonderful for me to study in New York, in this atmosphere.
And after all this travel in Moscow, in Vienna, in New York, you then decided to come back to Helsinki.
Yes.
What made you choose to become a teacher at this point?
Well, after Juilliard, I still had my doctoral exam in New York University with Eugene List. And then it was time to return home because I had a feeling that in Finland, at that point, there were some jobs available, especially at the Sibelius Academy. And I had the feeling that now it's the right moment. Also, my dear wife was in the same situation. She had also completed her studies and wanted to find a job. So we both found jobs here at the Sibelius Academy.
And this was in the early 80s.
Yes.
And you've been in this school. This school has now been your musical home for the last 4 decades.
Yes.
In what major ways has this place changed since when you first arrived?
Very much. But it's not only because of the academy itself, it's because of the children's training in the music schools. As you all know, the music institutes, musiikkiopistot, this network of musiikkiopistot was created in the late 50s or in the 1960s. And there were lots of Finnish children who then were already rather good at the age of 16, 17, and they applied to the academy. We had very few foreign applicants at that time, unlike now. Now it's the opposite. We have 80% foreign applicants and 20% Finnish applicants. This is, of course, in a way very good internationalization, but it's a little pity that there are fewer Finnish children who take music seriously, at least piano playing.
This musiikkiopistot, do you detect that it's had its peak and that now the situation is not as strong as it has been?
That's perhaps a little bit extreme to say it like that, but something like that.
And in these 40 plus years that you've been teaching, how have you shaped your own pedagogical world? What are the pedagogic values that guide the way you are? Because as I said when we started, your students have gone on to become teachers themselves. They've gone on to become prize-winning pianists. You have been an influential figure in the lives of generations of students. Are you aware of the kinds of things that they are inheriting from you?
Oh, I could ask them. I would say it's like learning by doing. When I think how I taught 40 years ago, I sometimes think probably it was not very good, but maybe at least I had the enthusiasm and energy. And of course I had already studied long enough myself. So maybe it was not hopelessly bad, but I feel that now I think I teach better now than then.
I'm sure your students now are very happy. I know they're very happy.
I hope you're right.
Now we have to, of course, talk about your role as a jury member, because this world of piano competitions it's been a big part of your professional life, and of course it continues to be a facet that shapes the lives of many young pianists. Before we do that, I think it's time that we listen to your 4th track, because we've been talking about Schubert recently, and Schubert's been in the air, and now we're going to hear something by the Beatles.
Yes.
And this is not actually so far away from Schubert.
Surprisingly, yes. I remember the composer Erkki Salmenhaara said already in the 1960s to me, yes, Beatles is the Schubert of today. And I think it was now I understand it even better, what he meant.
Should we get the text of this song up, and you can maybe explain to us what is it about this song in particular, or about the Beatles in general, that gives you this feeling that Schubert hovers in the musical world?
First of all, I was a teenager when there was Beatlemania, and it was very important for me and my teenage life at that time. And of course, as you all know, Beatles is often like, close your eyes and I kiss you, and if I fell in love with you, and they are romantic love songs very often. But already then I realized that this song, Eleanor Rigby, is different. The lyrics it's nothing about love, it's about loneliness and death. So, parallel to Schubert, Der Tod und das Mädchen, and many others, so you know them much better than I. So and then also, as you know, you might know that this song has a string quartet accompaniment, which makes it very different from the regular rock songs of the Beatles. And I think is it visible now? Yes. Can you see the text? By the way, I can tell you that at least I did not know in the middle column, 2nd paragraph, look at him working, darning his socks And I didn't know what darning is, but it's parsia sukkia.
In this song, all the lonely people, where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? It almost seems like a question Schubert could ask.
Absolutely,
doesn't
yes,
it?
yes.
These wandering figures in all of these song cycles who,
Yes.
where are they going? Where do they come from? What is their story?
Yes.
This is a song from 1966
Yes.
by the Beatles. Let's have a listen. I think we have the pleasure of hearing the whole of this.
Okay. Yes, 2 minutes 40
Yeah.
seconds. Yeah.
Look at all the lonely people. Look at all the lonely people. Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been. Lives in a dream, waits at the window, wearing the face that she keeps in a jar by the door. Who is it for? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? Father Mackenzie, writing the words of a sermon that no one will hear. No one comes near. Look at him working, darning his socks in the night when there's nobody there. What does he care? All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong? Look at all the lonely people. Look at all the lonely people. Eleanor Rigby died in the church and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Father Mackenzie wiping the dirt from his hands as he walks from the grave. No one was saved. All the lonely people. Where do they all come from? All the lonely people. Where do they all belong?
The Beatles, Eleanor Rigby. Erik, you have been based in Helsinki now, of course, since the 80s, but your international career has continued primarily through your work on the competition juries in many of these very big international competitions around the world, Van Cliburn, for example, amongst many others. What is the importance of a competition in a pianist's life, and do you think that these competitions have the same importance that they once had?
Yes, I do. And there are actually now more competitions than ever before. And one reason is that whereas the string players and other wind instruments, they have auditions to enter an orchestra. The pianists don't have auditions because there are practically no places in orchestras for pianists. Also, opera singers, they have auditions for operas. The pianists have nothing like that. So these are our auditions, one could say. And also they are, in a positive sense of the word, social events for pianists. Pianists get to know each other, they meet each other, they discuss performances. So also for the young pianists, they are important goals, like signposts in their lives. So I think they are really important for pianists.
And as a juror on these competitions, I mean, you've been on so many juries. Are there any particular standout highlights? I mean, it must be quite exhausting on the one hand to listen to so many pianists in one
it's true,
sitting.
But I always say it's much easier to be on the jury than on the stage and play for the jury.
Have there been some particularly memorable moments in your life as a juror?
Well, as you mentioned, the Van Cliburn competition, this is one of the very, very most famous competitions in the world, and that was unforgettable. It was so huge and so well organized, and the level was so incredible.
Speaking of the level of pianists, how would you summarize the way in which the level of piano playing has shifted, let's say over the last 20 or 30 years?
let's say that a purely technical level of precision and speed and accuracy, that has gone through the roof, so to say.
And has that come at the expense of something else?
Well, when you play the last track, you will see what I mean, that the last track is the Carmen Fantasy, played by Horowitz. There are more modern performances, like Yu Wang. I am a great fan of Yu Wang, and she plays the same piece, but I don't feel that it's as authentic as Horowitz's own version. It is more accurate and faster, but it's not the same. It doesn't have the same atmosphere.
Let's have a listen. This is Vladimir Horowitz playing these variations on themes from Bizet's Carmen.
His own composition.
Deserves a round of applause for that. Yeah. Horowitz playing his own variations on themes from Bizet's Carmen. And this imagination is extraordinary.
Yes. By the way, he made several versions of this composition, and he also recorded it several times, always in a little different version.
This ideal combination of technique and imagination.
Absolutely. In New York, I had a great luck of hearing him several times live, and that's unique, that one cannot describe the tension and atmosphere that was in the hall when he played.
I think our time is almost up, but before we finish and before I give the audience a chance to ask one or two questions, I wonder, you've had a long, impressive and sustained career as a musician, and you have seen so many great pianists in concert, you have trained so many great pianists. After all of these years and after such closeness with musical material, with the instrument, with teaching, I wonder what are some of the lessons that you have learned? What has music taught you?
One should always look for new areas of interest. And I think the present generation of young pianists, they are more versatile than our generation. Present-day pianists, they can, of course, play classical repertoire very well. They can often also play jazz and improvise. They can play chamber music and lead. They can lead festivals. They can write articles. They are extremely versatile. And I think this is the future of our musicians.
Are you optimistic then about the future?
Very optimistic, because I see these skills in the young generation.
Well, I think optimism for the future is a good place to sort of park our conversation. Erik Tawaststjerna, thank you very, very much for your time and for your absolutely fascinating insights. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Keval. Thank you.
Great pleasure.
Thank you.
We have a few moments if there are one or two questions from you. So please, if you just raise your hand, somebody will come round with a microphone. There's one there at the back.
Hello. Having been in a quite a unique position to gain insight into Sibelius and his music, what are some of the most interesting things you have found out about the man and his works?
Do you mean things that I, for example, heard when I followed my father's work on the biography? Do you mean such things?
Yeah, or I mean, I assume you've having had the diaries in your house, you probably read them.
Yeah.
And just being in that environment of Sibelius scholarship.
Yes.
And in an environment which not a lot of people have gotten to be in.
Thank you. It's a good question. Not an easy one to answer, because, as I said, I was sort of immersed in Sibelius's life during my first 30 years. So I kept hearing things about his diary and his character, and there were many interesting things. One that I found a little puzzling was that Sibelius was very hopeful that there would be some ancestors in his family who would be of nobility. And that is rather weird, because he was not of nobility, but who cares? And that somehow seems to me very strange, that for him it was a particular matter, that he had hoped that there would be some distant relative who would be nobility. But maybe that was the society at that time. Maybe it was one reason. I can't quite explain it, but this is something that one normally doesn't think about when you think about Sibelius.
Yeah, it definitely says something about the values of
the
society.
values of that. I don't know what else.
There's somebody
Please.
here at the front.
Thank you.
The microphone's just coming down.
Yes, thank you very much. As a layman, I can only pose a very practical question about the instrument, piano. We know that there are ordinary pianos, expensive pianos, and very expensive pianos. I started to think about this once in London, attending a concert where an Italian pianist, I think it was Pollini, was playing something, and it was said that he always, when he travels, wants to have his own piano with him. Now, if you are touring the world, this can be quite complicated and quite expensive. You can imagine, I wonder whether it is true, at least the piano he was using then, there was a name Pollini written on it. Now, does the piano have to be extremely expensive in order to make great music? And has the development of piano reached its absolute zenith now with Steinways that we have today?
Thank you. It's an interesting question. First of all, Steinway, as we all know, has the, how would I say, it's number one among most pianists. And this is a good reason, of course, that it is a very high quality instrument. However, it's a little pity that many other brands, such as Bösendorfer, Bechstein, Fazioli, they are always sort of left aside, and very few concert halls have any other instruments than Steinway. In a way, it's understandable because everybody is happy with Steinway. With other brands, not everybody is happy. Some people are very keen on playing Fazioli, for example. Some are supporters of Bösendorfer, but Steinway is good for everyone. Now, whether it's the final development stage, it's difficult to answer. We don't know what comes in 100 years. But I think Steinway construction has more or less remained the same in the last 50 years. It has not developed so much. Did this answer your question at all? Yes. By the way, the pianos, when you say Pollini played a special piano, I think originally the price of that piano was the same as any Steinway D model. I don't think Pollini had to pay, probably he did not have to pay at all, but it's not a question of the money, so to say. Steinway has a fixed price, and no matter who plays it, it's the same price, or which concert hall ever buys it. They pay the same price, which is about 250,000 euros.
Yes, over here.
Thank you for a very fascinating talk to both of you. There were some things I already knew, but there was one thing that was absolutely new to me, and that was your Beatles age, Erik. So I also had a Beatles age, and it was a great nuisance to my father, this music. How did you manage to live your Beatles age in a home like yours?
Well, our home was on two separate floors, the two apartments on top of each other, and I listened to the Beatles on the top floor, and my father worked on the bottom floor, so it was not such a problem after all. But it was really, I remember when I went to the store and bought this Revolver long-playing LP disc, and there was Eleanor Rigby. That was one of the great experiences in my teenage years. And I bought most of the LPs at that time, immediately when they came out. It was fascinating. But otherwise, you are aiming at the right thing, because my father basically hated pop music. So he never recommended that, but he tolerated it.
He had no choice.
Yeah, he had no choice, yes.
Are there any other questions? Maybe this is the last.
Hello, thank you very much for this talk, both of you. And my question is about your identity as a pianist, who as a father who is also a pianist, because you told us about how you built it yourself as a teacher, maybe trying to do different as you had as a child. but how is it about your artistic identity as a pianist? Yes, that's
thank
my
you.
question. Thank you.
Yes, my father, although he abandoned his concert career around the time when I was born, he still played every day at home. He practiced Sibelius pieces, some Chopin pieces, Beethoven Les Adieux Sonata, and they were sort of etched in my consciousness because I heard them often, and he had culture. He played them maybe not like Richter or Gilels, but he had a special touch and he understood the music. So in that sense, I was very much influenced by his pianistic culture. As I said, he was not a great teacher for children, so that part was not so good. But I was immersed in this very high-quality musical culture through him. And that was maybe the important. Also, he brought me to good concerts. I heard great artists already when I was a little boy in Helsinki. So I owe much to my father in that sense.
Well, I think that's a nice way to end. And Erik, thank you once more for being my guest this evening, and thank you to all of you for joining. This is, as I said, the last Siba Talks for this academic year, but we continue in September, which maybe is not so far away. So you can make a note in your diaries now that on September the 19th, there will be the next episode of this series. And in the meantime, I guess I wish you all a happy spring and a happy summer, and that I'll see you then in the autumn. And for now, one big round of applause for Erik Tawaststjerna.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really lovely.
Wonderful.
Super. Thank you.